أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق سيدنا ونبينا أبا القاسم محمد وآله الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين. So inshallah today based on the point where I have reached in refuting certain false claims on the Ismaili website. On this website, I will pin it. Today, I will dedicate today's room to the concept of Bada. What is Bada? Because at the point we have actually reached, I was intending to open a room for Zurara, for example. But yesterday when I looked at the website, I saw like they made certain claims on Zurara. So I was compelled to speak on Zurara yesterday and not to create like an independent title dedicated to Zurara has a topic on its own. So similarly, when I looked at the point I have reached, that is point number, I think number 2. Number 2. So when I look at point number 2, I see it is actually Ismaili claims relating to Bada. So we will examine point by point and see how these Ismailis have actually tried to distort this topic on Bada. So the title number 2, or the proof number 2, under proof number 2, the title is The Only Way to Deny the Nas of Maulana Ismail is Through Contradictory Hadith presented in 12 Hadith books. First of all, we haven't seen a Nas. We've gone through, this is like today is it the 6th? Yeah, today is part 6 in proving the Imamah of Imam al-Kazem and also refuting their points. Today, it is part 6, and we haven't seen any Nas whereby Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was reported to have said, "This my son Ismail, he will be the Imam after me." We haven't seen one. This is what is the meaning of Nas. Now, they've brought weak hadiths in relation, for example, to certain companions, either attacking Imam Musa al-Kazem or even Imam Sadiq himself, perhaps because the same companion that attacked Imam Musa al-Kazem also attacked Imam al-Sadiq. And they've brought, Mursal hadith, the Mursal hadith that I touched on yesterday, which is, allegedly quoting Imam Ali al-Hadi, that he said Allah did Bada on Sayyid Muhammad alayhi salam, like the way Allah did Bada on Ismail after Imam Sadiq pointed or indicated to Ismail and appointed him. And this hadith is actually from Abi Hashim, from Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari al-Qummi. But in the end, there is two possibilities here. We've dealt on the issue of the chain, we've dealt on the matin, and we've dealt on the statement of Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari, and we didn't find anything that gives the idea that Sa'd actually transmitted anything reliable as such. So we can say maybe Abi Hashim didn't understand the hadith properly, or we can say Sa'd is purporting based on his maqalat wal firaq, whereby based on the statement he has recorded about certain groups, yaz'amun, they claim. Or it could be maybe Sheikh al-Tusi has actually summarized the points in al-maqalat wal-firaq of the Ismailis. Or it could be that there is actually someone in between al-Ash'ari al-Qummi, Sa'd ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari al-Qummi, and Sheikh al-Tusi, because there is a gap here of about 100 years between Sa'd ibn Abdullah al-Ash'ari al-Qummi and Sheikh al-Tusi. There's almost 100 years. And the purpose itself of the hadith being there, it is actually to refute this claim, whereby Sheikh al-Tusi in the footnote of the hadith clearly mentioned that this was what the people thought. So he's actually negating that there was any designation from Imam Sadiq or Imam al-Hadi, because he also said this was what people thought about Sayyid Muhammad. So in other words, we haven't seen anything which constitute nas from Imam Sadiq, whereby he is saying, this my son Ismail, he would be the Imam after me. Why am I repeating this point? Because this was the last argument I touched on in part 5 yesterday. So I'm touching on this point because under proof number 2, there is a baseless claim here. They are actually trying to claim a non-existent nas. That the only way to deny the nas, which doesn't exist, of Maulana Ismail is through contradictory hadith presented in 12 hadith books. So we have to make it clear that we haven't seen any nas. Now, it would actually, be fruitful if, for example, let's say Ismailis actually have compilations of hadith like we do, like for example, Al-Kafi, Bihar al-Anwar, and Al-Istibsar, and other books, for them to say, oh, well, you guys lied, or you guys dodged, or something. Well, it doesn't exist. You can't, you cannot give something you don't have. So the entire basis for the Ismaili doctrine and believing that Ismail was the successor was just like the many sects that actually emerged after the death of every Imam, and based on what they think, or maybe some of them genuine shubuhat, and some of them maybe for financial reasons, they rebelled against the Imam, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't, spend more time than I have already on this clarification on the title. I will go straight to the arguments. So 2a, under 2a, now there's proof number 2, there is a statement which I've dealt with. Now there is number 2a, and there is another statement. It says, to negate Maulana Ismail's nas, shown in proof number 1, which I don't know what they are talking about, because we've dealt with like all the points on the proof number 1. There is nothing like nas. 12 hadith attributed to the Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, or to the Imam Ja'far, as reported by scholar Sheikh as-Saduq, state God was unaware that Ismail would die. Well, I'm not drunk. I'm actually reading this from a website claiming that Sheikh as-Saduq said or believed or state God was unaware that Ismail would die. So this is a claim that is attributed to our scholar Sheikh as-Saduq, that he stated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not aware of Ismail dying. This is claim number one. And so Allah changed his mind and appointed another successor in Ismail's place. To assert God was ignorant is a fallacy and contradiction, since by definition, God knows all. So they've made two claims here, that Sheikh as-Saduq said Allah was not aware, and that God changed his mind and he appointed another successor. Three claims: unaware, changed his mind, appointed another successor. Three claims against Sheikh as-Saduq. Definitely, I would read, or I will read, what Sheikh as-Saduq, rahmatullahi alayh, said. If he actually believed that Allah changed his mind, Allah was unaware about the death of Ismail, or even if Allah, appointed another successor to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. This is like, I don't, if maybe Abu Huraira, we speak about normally, we focus so much on the Sunnis, because in the end, Ismail is well. In the end, they believe in Imamah and all that. But, I wouldn't expect, such a very fantastic allegation. Like, if it was Abu Huraira who was making such a claim, I would say, oh, well, we know Abu Huraira is a liar. Wallah, even Abu Huraira would be crying in his grave when he hears such an allegation which has no basis, that is not, cannot be proven. Tayyib. I should just say, this is a lie anyway. So the first quotation is from Sheikh as-Saduq, from Kitab at-Tawheed, and also from Kamal ad-Din, page 69, and it's found also in Bihar al-Anwar. So the quotation states, Imam Ja'far, in brackets, allegedly said, no new affair bada appeared to God, bada lillah, like what happened, or like what appeared to him about my son Ismail. Meaning nothing manifested to Allah greater like what manifested to him about my son Ismail. For he was taken away by death before me, in order that it will be known that he was not the Imam after me. Tayyib. Does this statement prove Allah did not know? Does it prove that Allah did not know Ismail will die? No, because the statement is saying Allah took Ismail away so that he would be made known the Imam, the true Imam. Does it state that Allah changed his mind about Imam Musa al-Kazem or Ismail bin Imam? I don't see anything like that. Did he replace an Imam? No. Tayyib. Let's read on. The second quotation, it says, from Kitab al-Tawheed and from Kamal ad-Din. Imam Ja'far said, no new affair appeared to God like what happened to him about my son Ismail. Basically a repetition. A repetition. The third quotation, Imam Ja'far said, no new affair bada appeared to God like what happened or what appeared to him about my son Ismail, since he was slain before me, in order that it will be known that he was not the Imam after me. So if he was not the Imam after Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, and Allah wanted to make it known by taking him away, how does this constitute saying that Allah did not know Ismail was going to die? They stated clearly that Sheikh al-Saduq said Allah was not aware that Ismail is going to die, and Allah changed his mind, and Allah replaced one Imam with another. So in these three statements, I don't even need, to bring the statement of which I will bring the statement. I will bring the hadith also from Kitab al-Tawheed. But from even what they have presented so far, we don't see this statement of Sheikh al-Saduq saying that Allah changed his mind, or Allah didn't know, or Allah replaced one Imam with another. Nothing like that. Tayyib, let's go on. It says, the content of this hadith is contradictory. So, in other words, they have created a lie, attributed the lie to Sheikh al-Saduq. So now, they are making this statement that these ahadith are contradictory. On what basis? On the basis that Sheikh al-Saduq said what they are accusing him of saying. Sheikh al-Saduq said that what they have actually created and attributed to him. And now they are responding to their fabrication against Sheikh al-Saduq. So they said, the content of this hadith is contradictory and suggests God did not know that Ismail was going to die, repeating the lie, and that his death was a new event that became known to God when it happened. God transcends space and time. Now they are trying to be philosophical, God transcends space and time, and his knowledge encompasses all things. So there can be no question of an event like the death of a person being a newly known affair. Bada. They have also given their definition of what bada is. The 12th academic, Sakedina, points out the absurdity in this idea. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So now they have a 12th, a supposed 12th academic who is called Abdul Aziz Sakadina. And this, this miraculous, enlightened 12th academic who knows more than the Imams, he said Bada is absurd. We saw the examples of people they call academics yesterday. Now, we have this, this wonder professor that they are referring to as a 12th academic. Now, I'm going to refute the claims they have made on Sheikh al-Saduq. It's not a problem. Because Sheikh al-Saduq, he is a ton. Sheikh al-Saduq, he is a ton in the eyes of the Zaydis and the Ismailis. More than he is a ton in the eyes of the Mukhalifin, who are Sunnis. And this is why they have things against Sheikh al-Saduq. Tayyib. I will respond on the issue of Sheikh al-Saduq by quoting him, and I will define what Bada is from our books and from our perspective and our understanding, and I will clarify, based on what Sheikh al-Saduq has said, where this idea that Bada
is actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changing his mind, or it's new knowledge, or it's new information, or it's actually something that Allah did not know. I would actually come to all this. But first of all, you have a supposed 12er who is telling you, Shias, that you believe in something that is absurd. So, now the problem, now we have a civil war here. The Ismailis are trying to create a civil war for us. So we have to put our house in order before, we refute their website. So let's see what Mr. Sakadina has to say. He said, the Bada doctrine implied God's change of mind because of a new consideration caused by the death of Ismail. However, such connotations in the doctrine of Bada, in brackets, change of mind, raised serious questions about the nature of God's knowledge, and indirectly about the inability of the Imams to prophesy future occurrences. Ibn Babawayh, or as he writes it, Ibn Babuya, I don't think he means Ibn Babawayh, cites a tradition in which the sixth Imam as-Sadiq says, he who asserts that God, the mighty and glorious, does something new which he did not know before, from him I dissociate myself. Now, we will check this hadith and why Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said this. Then he went on. And then Imam Sadiq added, he who asserts that God, after doing something, repents concerning it. This is all the drama of this guy, given his definitions in line with the Ismaili narrative. And he's supposedly a 12 Shia. So he goes on, quoting Imam Sadiq alayhi salam in his statement. He said, he who asserts that God, after doing something, repents concerning it, then he, in our opinion, is a denier of God Almighty. He's a kafir, in other words. This is what Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is saying. So technically, they are actually passing takfir on 12ers. This is the case until stated otherwise and clarified. So in other words, Sakadina is passing, he is allegedly a 12er, and he's passing takfir on his fellow 12ers. Taib, he goes on. He said, but the question of the change concerning the imamate from Ismail to Musa al-Kazem, the sons of as-Sadiq, remained unsettled. Abdul Aziz Sakidina, his book Islamic Messianism, sorry, this word is kind of twisting my tongue. Islamic Messianism, the idea of Mahdi in 12 Shi'ism, pages 153 to 154. Type. So, first of all, let's see who is Mr. Sakadina. Is he really 12er? Yesterday we exposed, they are supposed academics. They are all employees of the Ismaili Institute. So let's see if Mr. Sakadina is truly a 12er Shia. And if he's an independent academic or a researcher, and this man, Miskin, Haram, he wrote a book maybe somewhere in Alaska or somewhere in Nicaragua, or maybe somewhere in the Solomon Islands, and, this by accident, he's an independent researcher. He's not prejudiced, This is what one would expect. He's staying maybe on a Pacific island. he researched, he wrote a book. And, by chance, some Ismaili person sees this book and he read it. And, let me add this information to my website. Was this the case? Or, was this guy, Mr. Sakadina, was he hand in glove or hands in gloves with the Ismaili Institute? Was he a hired pen? Let's see. Sakadina. Okay, first of all, I will pin the first link. To see his position among the Shia. This is hadith.net. If you scroll down the second paragraph, it says, in 1998, Grand Ayatollah Sistani issued a statement against Sakadina that advised Muslims not to listen to his talks or to ask him questions about religious affairs. See original text, footnote number 3. So, condemnation. طيب. We come next to the Ismaili website, the Institute, the Ismaili Institute website in London, in the UK. It says, Norman Calder, Farhad Daftari, Alice C. Hansberger, and Anna Maria Schimmel focus on the development of intellectual traditions in various Muslim communities of medieval times. The pre-modern and contemporary periods are the setting for a third group of contributions by John Cooper, Abdul Aziz Sakadina, and Muhammad Erkun, which investigate the relationship between political and religious authority on the one hand and the social and intellectual life of Muslims on the other hand. All the contributors highlight in their different ways the pivotal role of the intellect in the formation of Islamic cultures and its continuing relevance for the Muslim world. So, these people are recognized as contributors by who? The Institute of Ismaili Studies. And if this is not enough, if this is not implicating enough that this guy is been given, just like was the other guy called Farhad Daftari, he's been given the title of 12er in order to conceal or camouflage his statement or sugarcoat his statement. Let me show you what is even more concerning. This is from his mouth. This is an interview with Abdul Aziz Sakadina on his life and scholarship. So, he said, if you just find Ismaili and the first and second results, he said, in other words, I had a broad education to start with. My interest was to continue to go to McGill University in Canada. He was born in Africa because Professor Iqbal Ansari at the Institute of Islamic Studies, who had also taught at McGill, encouraged me to apply there for my graduate studies. However, again, because of my financial situation, I had to give up that idea. As a footnote to that ambition to my as a footnote to that ambition to study in the West, I must relate that though I was almost offered a scholarship by the Aga Khan, the Imam of Nizari Ismailis or Nizari Ismailis, its acceptance was conditional on my conversion to Ismaili Shiism. So I hope everybody heard that. It's not Muhammad Rafid saying this, it's Mr. Sakadina. So in other words, he was offered a scholarly opportunity with the condition that he must convert to Ismaili Shiism. This is what he said. Today, I see him. He's a professor in the West. He's been quoted by Ismailis on their website. And he is presented, as a 12 Shi'i. And his name appears on the Ismaili website as a contributor. I see a statement from Grand Ayatollah Sistani against him. And you want me to believe that this guy is not prejudiced or he's not suspicious? Of course, I wouldn't accept that, because he has mutilated the concept of Bada. He mutilated the concept of Bada, and he's presenting it to us the way the Ismailis want him to do or to present it. And that's why they are quoting him. Tayyib. See what he said further. He said, he was asked, in other words, in 1966, your plans to continue your higher education were still unclear. He said, no, my plan was to go to McGill University and study at the Institute of Islamic Studies. Professor Charles Adams was the director of the institute at McGill. He was the one to encourage me to apply for the Aga Khan scholarship, which meant that I would be serving the Aga Khan community once I graduated with my PhD. At this time, Aga Khan was determined to increase Islamic literacy in his community and to orient his followers to learn Islamic religious practices, to become part of the larger Muslim community that did not regard the Ismaili community, because of their beliefs as legitimate branch of the Islamic faith. In other words, what he's telling you here is the Aga Khan was trying to recruit young, bright Muslim intellectuals to sponsor them to study on the basis that they would become Ismailis, and or when they graduate, they would actually, what's the word he said here? He said, to become part of the Muslim community, Aga Khan was looking for training young Ismaili scholars of the Islamic studies to serve the Ismaili communities. This is what he's saying. Then he went on at the end that I fitted as a potential candidate and recipient of that scholarship, except that I was not an Ismaili. He said he was not an Ismaili. Now, is he still not an Ismaili? I don't know. I cannot read minds. But with all this, you still present him, as somebody who is not prejudiced. I wouldn't even listen to him for 2 minutes. Tayyib. It's not over.
This is supposedly a Shi'i. So if you search for Taraweeh, he said, I think before that. The question, do you remember a time when they knew you were not Sunni? He said, I had good feelings about the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet's family, and I entertained positive opinion about the early companions of the Prophet, collectively known as Sahaba. So what does this mean? Like, which companions? Is it Abu Bakr? Is it Umar? Who? Is this the Shia position? Then he went on. He said, hence, I was not a regular Shi'i who entertained negative attitude towards Sunnism. So basically, this guy, he's a scholar. He's a secular scholar. He didn't have a thorough traditional Shi'i upbringing. Then he went on to say, I think my upbringing in Tanzania was a formative factor in my openness. I still remember that my father would take us for Taraweeh prayers, the supererogatory prayers which the Shiites do not perform. So he performed prayers we consider to be bid'ah at night in the month of Ramadan to a Sunni mosque. So, do you still consider this guy a Shi'i? Anyway, I think the point has been made, and I wouldn't waste more time on this man. We move on. Then they said, in fact, the Imam Ja'far himself completely refutes the very notion that something new can happen to God and commands us to dissociate from anyone who holds such a belief. They quoted the hadith of Imam Sadiq, if someone claims that something manifests itself to Allah one day, which he did not know the previous day, then dissociate from that person. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Where is this statement found? As-Saduq, Kamal al-Din, wa Itmam al-Ni'mah, wa Tamam al-Ni'mah, I think. Page 69. So I thought Sheikh al-Saduq doesn't believe in this. So you actually attribute falsehood to Sheikh al-Saduq, then you formulate an argument as if you're answering him, and then you present the statement of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq as if it is contradictory to the Shia position. And then you say, oh, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq actually spoke against this. But no, you are actually misconstruing, misrepresenting, mispresenting, lying about Sheikh al-Saduq, mutilating the concept of Bada, giving it a definition we do not associate with. So, it's actually very problematic when somebody is actually making such false allegation. Somebody in the comments on the room is saying, I have to admit there are very strong arguments that this clubhouse sessions has no effect on. No problem. If it has no effect on, nobody is asking you or forcing you to stay in here. And now with the many paid pens and all that, we have to ask, who sent you to type this? Ismailis would only have a point or strong argument if Shiism is false. Only. If Shiism is false,
and truly Imam Sadiq, his son, he appointed him and he died, and he didn't know, Shiism is false, and by extension Islam is false, and by extension there is no God. Only on that basis you can say Ismailis have a strong argument. Anything other than the 12 doctrine is atheism, in the sense that all religion will be proven false. This is what I mean. And all sects, even within Islam. Taib, we go on. They said, interestingly, the 12ers were faced with a similar situation when their 10th Imam, Ali al-Naqi, that's Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, originally designated his eldest son, Abu Ja'far Muhammad, as his successor. Did he? No, he did not. Because we read yesterday the statement, the refutation of Sheikh al-Tusi. Then they went on, however, Muhammad died before his father, and instead his brother Abu Muhammad Hassan al-Askari succeeded him as the 11th Imam of the 12ers. In this case, the 12ers tried to explain, again, they are applying here the statement that it was changed in Nas through the same idea of Bada. Now, an interesting question will be, if the 12ers actually use Bada in these two instances, which doesn't mean what they are actually defining it to imply. Now, let's say the 12ers never existed. Let's assume the 12ers never existed. Let's assume that Imam Musa al-Kazem alayhi salatu wassalam was never born. Let's assume this. Does this mean that the Ismailis have a coherent doctrine historically? Does it mean along the line, even before Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, people did not apostate? People did not formulate their own beliefs? People did not go against the Imams? For God's sake, Imam Hussein was slaughtered, alayhi salam. After him, there was a division. Some supposed Shias believed in the Imamah of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah until it was settled between him and Imam Zainul Abidin. Then, after Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, you have the emergence of the Zaydis. The Zaydis don't care about the 12ers, they don't care about the Ismailis. Then, after Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, you have groups with funny ideas that Imam Baqir didn't die and so on and so forth. Even though by and large, the Imamah of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was not contested. But still, you have, funny ideas about Imam Baqir. You still have the Zaydi factor. You have also the Hassanis. You have, for example, Nafs al-Zakiyya, Al-Hassan ibn al-Hassan ibn al-Hassan, Al-Hassan al-Muthallath. He imprisoned Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And the very contention we are on, guess what? The very contention about the Imamah after Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the reason I am saying, let's assume the 12ers did not exist. Imam Musa al-Kazem alayhi salam was not born. Let's assume this. Was there no conflict? Is the conflict exclusively between 12ers and Ismailis? The answer is no. There were people who believed in Abdullah al-Aftah, the oldest son of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, who claimed for himself that he was the Imam. And Imam Musa al-Kazem said Abdullah does not want Allah to be worshipped. You have the Nawusiyya, they didn't believe Imam Sadiq died. You have within the Ismailis three Ismaili groups. So, on this point, how does your argument against Bada actually help you? How does it help you? Because in the end, you have three Ismaili groups, two of which went into extinction. So how can you tell me that, oh, you know, the 12ers are trying to cope or whatever? No, we are not. Because there were prominent Sahabas of Imam Sadiq, as mentioned yesterday. They didn't have, you know, they didn't fall into the issue of taqiyya or doubts or following the wrong person. No, they did not. The bulk of the Sahaba of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And none of them came out and say, well, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said so and so. No, we've not seen that. Time. We go on. So, this hadith, Ali ibn Mahziyar says, I said to Abu al-Hasan, the 10th 12th Imam, if something should happen and I take refuge in Allah from that, then who will it go to? He said, it will go to my eldest son. If the eldest son is dead, what happens? That's number one. The hadith, in relation to this, it will go to my eldest son alive who has no defects. This is another version of this hadith. So now, if the eldest son is dead, what happens? Or if he dies? Was Ismail the eldest son? He wasn't. Abdullah was. So how does this hadith help you? We read on. Again from Usul al-Kafi, it says, something has become manifested to Allah in Abu Muhammad after Abu Ja'far, something which was not known to him before, just as something became manifest to him about Musa al-Kazem after the death of Ismail. Does this hadith mention this words? Is this what is mentioned in the hadith? You see how they have misquoted the hadith? This is not intellectual. There is no intellectual integrity here. There is no scholarly integrity. This is misconduct. I will show you the hadith. This was quoted yesterday because this is the hadith which they try to, you know, play with the other version in Al-Tusi's Ghaiba. By the way, this hadith is actually can be accepted, but there is a ghali. One of the narrators is a ghali, it's from the Ghulat, and therefore it's actually graded majhul. So see the translation here. I was in the presence of Abu al-Hasan after the death of his son Abu Ja'far. I thought to myself, like wanting to say, the two, Abu Ja'far and Abu Muhammad at this time are like Abu al-Hasan, Musa and Ismail, the sons of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. At such time, Abu al-Hasan turned to me before I will say anything and said, yes, O Abu Hashim, Allah applied Bada, a change in the current natural conditions. In the case of Abu Muhammad, after Abu Ja'far, a fact that was not known for him. In the same, he applied Bada in the case of Musa after the death of Ismail as an issue that through which his condition came to light. In other words, Bada is manifestation of what was already the case. Then the hadith goes on to say, that is what you taught to yourself, even though the people of falsehood may dislike Abu Muhammad, my son will be the succeeding Imam after me. With him is the knowledge that he will need, and with him is the means of Imamah. So where in this hadith does it say that something which was not known to Allah before became manifest? You see how they are actually mutilating our hadith? And when we speak like, oh, we shouldn't cause issues, but this is not honesty. This is not proper at all. Learner is saying, Abdullah al-Aftah wasn't the eldest son, Ismail was. Kindly share a source. Yeah, I can give you a source if you want, but the point is, Imam Ja'far is called Abu Abdullah. He's not called Abu Ismail. I've never seen one hadith or one book where Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq is called Abu Ismail. He's always Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Always. I think even this, based on your common sense, should actually reflect the truth here. I don't even need to, to go to Siyar A'lam al-Nubala or go to even Shia hadith. No, Abdullah was the oldest son. Tayyib. Then we go down. I'm trying to read their arguments because, of course, I will still make my presentation on the concept of Bada and what our scholars say and everything. But let's see their arguments first. 2b, it says, of course, before 2b, the last, analysis they gave, how can the death of any person be newly known to God? Nobody said this. It's only your stupidity that says this. God, by definition, always has complete knowledge of all things, trying to, be philosophical out of nothing. It is self-evident that hadiths which theologically contradict and question the omniscience of God cannot be genuine and thus cannot be used to justify the imamate of Musa and al-Askari. Tayyib. We don't believe anything contradicts the omniscience of God. We will prove this even from the Quran, that Bada is not what you say it is. It's not. Tayyib. We go on 2b. They say another argument used to try and nullify Maulana Ismail's designation a contradictory hadith where the Imam pleads with God for Ismail to be the Imam after him, but God refuses his request. We will come to this also. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is quoted here from Bihar al-Anwar. I have not ceased imploring Allah, the Exalted, about Ismail, begging him to bring him back to life and make him the Qa'im after me, but my Lord has refused. This is not something that a man places wherever he wants. Rather, it's a covenant from God. He will make this covenant with whomever he wills. And so Allah has willed that my son, Musa, would be the rectifier after me and has refused to make Ismail the Imam after me. Then, okay, there's nothing wrong with that statement and it will be proven. Then another, Imam Sadiq said, nothing has been manifested to Allah. This is more or less a repetition of what we've read earlier. I asked Allah that He would preserve my son after me. He refused. a reputation. The above hadith attributed to Imam Sadiq suggests that the Imam had wished and desire and prayed, had wishes and desires and prayers which were contradictory or against the will of God. No, it's not contradictory against the will of God, and this will be proven. We go on. They state that Imam Ja'far wanted or desired for his son Ismail to be the next Imam, but God refused and instead chose Musa. Yet, the Imam has said that his words are at the same level of authority as the words of God. My words are the words of my father, and the words of my father are the words of my grandfather, and the words of my grandfather are the words of my great-grandfathers, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, and their words are the words of Ali, and the words of Ali, alayhi salam, are the words of the Prophet, and the words of the Prophet are the words of God Almighty. MashaAllah. Yeah, why not? Does it mean they are one and the same? No. Type. We go on. So was Allah pleading with himself? Subhanallah. So basically this is like a trinity of the Christians. No, this is not the trinity of the Christian. So was Allah pleading? This is the question they are asking. Was he pleading with himself? Who says this? Type. Let's read on. The whole idea that the Imam will desire something other than what God desires and implore God to grant him his desire is absurd. So basically these people, they are actually calling the Holy Quran absurd. Because I will prove from the Holy Quran where Rasulullah wanted something and Allah wanted something else. This is in the Quran. It's a verse in the Quran. Rasulullah wanted something and Allah wanted something else. Now, both of the options are good options, but Allah deemed something else more necessary and more appropriate. This is what we actually see in the Holy Quran. I will get there, but I'm stating these arguments so we can actually remember them when I'm refuting. Then they went on to say, the whole idea that the Imam will desire something other than what God desires and implore God to grant him his desire is absurd and contradicts the very definition of Imamah, because the Imam by definition is the Khalifa or representative of God on earth and is divinely inspired, mu'ayyad by the Holy Spirit. Whatever the Imam desires on a religious or spiritual matter is a reflection of God's will and can never go against the will of God. Therefore, given the contradictions with the very definition of imamate in the above hadith, it is self-evident that they, like others upon which the Twelvers rely on to refute the imamah of Maulana Ismail, such as those that state God was ignorant of Ismail's death until it happened, as discussed earlier, cannot be genuine. 2c. They said, another argument in 12 text relies on hadith purportedly attributed to Imam Ja'far that contradict all historical evidence. In proof 1, that Imam Ja'far appointed his son Ismail as the Imam via Nas, and instead claimed that Ja'far alayhi salam actually condemned his beloved son Maulana Ismail as a sinner. The seminal 12er Sheikh as-Saduq, considered to be one of the greatest of 12er scholars, the same Saduq who cited, suggested that God cannot be ignorant, who cited hadith that God cannot be ignorant and changes his mind. So now it's kind of like, they are retracting. Has discussed in 2a above, offers the following narration as proof that Imam Ja'far could have never given Nas to Ismail and that Imam Ja'far had no affection for him whatsoever. This is not true. The fact that there are hadiths that Ismail was seen drinking somewhere, and then later he was seen by the Kaaba, by the walls of the Kaaba, and he was crying and he was repenting. This does not mean that Imam Sadiq did not love his son. It doesn't negate. So here it says, and how could Imam Sadiq have given nas to Ismail when he said indeed he was a sinner? He does not resemble me nor any of my fathers. That he was not like me and Imam, neither was he like my fathers. So they go on, to misrepresent Sheikh al-Saduq and what is found in our jurisprudence. They said he then provides two chains of narrations for this same hadith with slightly different wording. Al-Hasan ibn al-Rashid says, I asked Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq alayhi salam about Ismail, and he said, a sinner. He does not resemble me nor any of my fathers. Ubayd ibn Zurara says, I mentioned Ismail to Abu Abdullah as-Sadiq. He said, a sinner. He does not resemble me nor any of my fathers. However, again, the above hadiths are problematic because in another set of narrations reported by as-Saduq himself and others, Imam Ja'far condemns and contradicts the very statements he allegedly made concerning his son. No one should say about their child, he does not resemble me, nor anything of my fathers. So, their director goes on to say, such reports about Ismaili, dipsomania and his such reports about Ismail's disavowal by his father, especially as related by the 12 sources, probably represent later fabrications by those who did not accept the Ismaili line of Imams. No, this is not true. So the second hadith, if you go to Ilal al-Shara'i' of As-Saduq, it actually speaks about you as a father talking about your child's physical features. So you cannot actually look at your, basically if you as the father, you say your child does not, you doubt that this child, or you say that this child does not resemble you by looking at him physically, it simply means you are accusing your wife or the mother of your child of adultery. So this is not allowed. But the context of Imam Sadiq saying he doesn't resemble me or my fathers in the context of Isma and Imamah, this is not the same thing. Two different statements entirely. So you see how they are playing. I will still, as I've said, come to the issue of Bada. I will still come to that. But, I will read on because I want to get to a point whereby you will see clear tahrif of our hadith. Clear hadith. Fine, let's read on. So now they are quoting their... I think we can take point. I don't know if we can take number 3. Number 3 is too long. I will leave it for tomorrow. So let's stay here. Let's just stay with point number 2. Number 3, inshallah, will be for tomorrow because it goes out of the issue of Bada. So now, I will start from the beginning. So what is Bada? So from even the linguistic angle, this word has many meanings. If you go to Lisan al-Arab, the Arabic dictionary, and you actually want to find out what is bada from a linguistic point of view, bada means to show, to image, to make known, to make apparent. So of all the meanings in Lisan al-Arab, not one included to replace or to change, because this point is actually relevant to our discussion. We are talking here from a linguistic point. Now, the statement in Arabic, if somebody doesn't understand the nature of the Arabic language, it may actually appear that when somebody says bada lillah, it occurred to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It appeared to Allah. It emerged to Allah. It became known to Allah. Does this mean there is another entity that is actually influencing the creation? Or does it mean that this is a manifestation from Allah Himself? So whoever wants to make it sound as if, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is getting to know not by Himself, this is wrong. Now, we see the exact word bada in the Holy Quran. In verse 39, 47, Surah 39, verse 47, the verse says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ لِلَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا وَمِثْلَهُ مَعَهُ لَاقْتَدَوْا بِهِ مِنْ سُوءِ الْعَذَابِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَبَدَى لَهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يَكُونُوا يَحْتَسِبُونَ. And if those who did wrong had all that it is in the earth entirely, and the like of it with it, they would attempt to ransom themselves, thereby from the worst of the punishment on the day of resurrection. And there will appear to them from Allah that which they had not taken into account. In verse 48, same chapter, surah number 39, again the word is used. وَبَدَى لَهُمْ سَيِّئَاتُ مَا كَسَبُوا وَحَاقَ بِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. And appeared unto them what they had earned of evil, and they will be engulfed by what they use to mock. طيب. Now, Sheikh al-Mufid, let's see what Sheikh al-Mufid said in Tasheeh al-I'tiqadat al-Imamiyya. I will pin this link and then I will read the translation. Sheikh al-Mufid said, the meaning of the saying of the Imamiyya that Allah has done bada on someone is to mean that it has been made apparent on him or from him. And it is not meant of him. It is to make clear a view that was hidden and the apparent actions of Allah in His creation after it was known only to Allah. What can be ascribed with bada is what was not expected to appear, that is by the people. As such, nor could it be imagined for it to occur. what was known or expected to occur, and when it happens, cannot be described with bada. Then he goes on to say, and the statement of Imam Sadiq that Allah did not do bada like he did for Ismail means what was made to appear from Allah on him by warding off death from him. So now, the origin of mixing the issue of bada with change in Allah's actions, and trying to make it seem as if it's actually some change in Allah's mind, or Allah acquiring new knowledge and the likes. Where did it come from? Where did this come from? In Kamal al-Din wa Itmam al-Ni'mah, the same page 69, where they were quoting on the Ismaili website. This is Sheikh al-Saduq, that they made the claims about that. He said God changes his mind. God didn't know about Ismail's death. God replaced Ismail with another person. Let's see what Sheikh al-Saduq has to say. He said, the Imamiyya, he said in page 69, let me quickly pin the link here. This is what Sheikh al-Saduq is saying, not what is attributed to him falsely on the Ismaili website. He said, so the Zaydis claim that if the hadith of the 12 successors is true, then Imam Sadiq should have known it and his chosen companions, so they wouldn't have made any mistake. Sheikh al-Saduq said, our response to them is, on what basis do you claim that Imam Sadiq left a nas behind for Ismail to be Imam? And what is the hadith for such a claim? And who narrated it? And who accepted it? They would not find any to answer these questions. Verily, this is a rumor fabricated by those who claimed Ismail was an Imam. It has no basis. The hadith relating to the 12 successors has been widely narrated publicly and privately from the Prophet and the Imams, and we have narrated that which was from them in this book. Now, one interesting point that Sheikh al-Saduq is making here. He said, verily, this is a rumor fabricated by those who claimed Ismail was an Imam. Now, if we look at the history of the Shias, is this a factual statement that Sheikh al-Saduq is actually making? General, this topic is not for you. If you want to listen quietly in the audience, no problem. But if you want to spill your nonsense on the chat, you will be removed from the room. So consider this your last warning. Do not type any further messages. It's not allowed. And I'm not going to close the chat for your sake. So, an interesting point Sheikh al-Saduq made here. He said, this is a rumor fabricated by those who claim Ismail was an Imam. Tayyib, the Ismailis would agree with this statement, because we have seen other groups other than the 12ers and the Ismailis that emerged that both the Twelvers and the Ismailis do not agree with. For example, the Nawusiyya, who believed Imam Sadiq did not die and he went into Ghaiba and he will be the Mahdi. If you tell the Ismailis about them, they will say, oh, well, these guys, they were not truthful. They weren't saying the truth. So on this basis, it means in the history of the Shias, there has been fabrications where people have fabricated a hadith. And Islam itself is not immune in its entirety, even after the death of the Prophet. And this is the reason you have fabricated hadith. So the Shias either are not immune because they are fallible people. So if actually we both agree such things actually happened, why should we be wrong in thinking that the Ismailis actually fabricated this idea about Ismail being the Imam? And even among the Ismailis, there were three groups. One group that said he died, one group that said he didn't die, he will come back, and the third group that believed his son Muhammad would be the successor. So you have three groups. So even among them you would actually, have one or two that were actually fabricators. So it's so evident. But now, not because of this, we can say, oh, well, we are confused. Let's throw the baby and the bathwater. We should stop being Shias. No, because the essence and the genesis of Imamah it didn't even start at Ghadir Khum, but it was declared, it was established at Ghadir Khum by the Prophet himself. Then Sheikh al-Saduq went on. He said, as for the saying of the Imam, an affair of Allah did not manifest like it manifested for my son Ismail, but he cut him off by death before me so that it will be known he is not the Imam after me. To us, whoever says there is knowledge today that Allah did not know yesterday is a kafir, and dissociation from him is wajib, as reported from Imam Sadiq. He's quoting here Imam Sadiq. So how can Sheikh al-Saduq be quoting this hadith from Imam Sadiq, and the Ismailis are actually attributing on that website to him what the Imam is condemning and the Sheikh is endorsing and approving of the statement of the Imam has his own belief by quoting it, and they are attributing lies to him? How is this fair? How is this godly? Somebody who has a living Imam, you're not expected to behave in this way. You can disagree with us, you can maintain your belief or whatever, but not through falsehood. This is not excusable. So on the following page, that's page 70, he said, after mentioning certain hadith, Sheikh al-Saduq explained that the concept of bada, which the Imamiyya hold, relates to Allah making prevalent an affair that was not apparent. This evidence given in line by Sheikh al-Saduq is in line with the notion found in the Quran, verse 844, that Allah makes a prevalent an affair that was destined. Verse 844, and remember when Allah showed them to you when you met them as few in your eyes, and He made you appear as few in their eyes, so that Allah might accomplish a matter already destined. In other words, it was make-believe, and to Allah are all matters returned. Then we see the hadith from Bihar al-Anwar. This hadith I'm going to quote, it actually relates to 3a, point 3a on the Ismaili website. That the title is "The Year and Cause of Ismail's Death Remain Unknown and Unverified. Many sources which claim that Ismail died in the lifetime of his father also report that eyewitnesses saw Ismail 3 days later." Taib. So, what's your position? You believe he died in the end. Today's Ismailis believe he died. And if you remember, I think on the second night, we did, was it on the second or the third? I think it was on the third night, proving Ismail was not an Imam. We gave historical and hadith accounts of how he was buried. So they are quoting this hadith here, not hadith, the same Farhad Daftari, their supposed academic who is a 12er, who was the co-director of the Ismaili Institute. He said the exact date and the circumstances of Ismail's death also remain unknown, not true. According to some Ismaili authors, Ismail survived Imam al-Sadiq. However, the majority of sources report that he predeceased his father in Medina and was buried in the Baqi cemetery. Many Ismaili and non-Ismaili sources repeat the story of how, before and during Ismail's funeral procession, Imam Sadiq made deliberate attempts to show the face of his dead son to witnesses, though some of the same sources also relate reports indicating that Ismail was seen in Basra soon afterwards. So, sources prove that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam took care in proving to everybody that Ismail alayhi salam, he was dead. And they actually admit to this. So, in this hadith from Bihar al-Anwar, volume 37, page 13, Yunus bin Yaqub said, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam ordered me to go to Mufaddal and condole him for Ismail. He said, convey my greetings of peace to Mufaddal and say to him, we have been tried through Ismail. Sorry, I think I'm reading the wrong, I'm reading the following hadith, just a second. So, the hadith that is pinned from volume 37, page 13 of Bihar, it says, Bada occurred in the death of Ismail, not in the Imamah of Imam al-Kazem. This is my headline, because in this hadith, it actually stated that death was written for Ismail 2 times. So this is the explanation of who? This is the explanation of Allam al-Majlisi. He said, فأما الرواية عن أبي عبد الله عليه السلام من قوله ما بدا لله في شيء كما بدأ له في إسماعيل. He said, this statement that Allah did not make apparent any affair as he made for Ismail, فإنها على غير ما توهموه أيضا من البداء في الإمامة. Said, this is not what the ignorant people believed happened to Imamah. In other words, this occurrence of Bada was not in relation to Imamah. He said, the ignorant, Bada was not in Imamah, but the ignorant imagines otherwise. But it was what was narrated from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that death was written twice for Ismail, and the Imam prayed that his son be spared. So Yunus bin Yaqub said, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam ordered me to go to Mufaddal ibn Umar and condole him for Ismail. He said, convey my greetings of peace to Mufaddal and say to him, we have been tried through Ismail and have remained patient. So be patient the way we have been patient. We wanted something, but Allah wanted something else. So we have submitted to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from Al-Kafi. This is in Al-Kafi, and the link is from Mu'jam Al-Ahadith Al-Mu'tabara. طيب. So, in volume 47, page 269, what I read from the Ismaili website on the point number 3A about Ismail, being seen somewhere and all that. This is from this hadith in Bihar Al-Anwar, volume 47, page 269. I will pin this. It says, narrated from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he said, a Satan, a demon, in other words, an evil spirit, or a Satan, a shaitan, has taken the form of my son Ismail, which appears in his image to mislead people. A Satan does not imitate the form of a prophet or a wasi. Whoever says to you that my son Ismail is alive and not dead, then that is the shaitan that has appeared unto him. I still wish to my Lord that he brings back my son to life and that he should remain after me. But my Lord refuses that. And this affair is not for a man from among us to place it where he would. This is a covenant from Allah, and he makes a covenant with whomsoever he wills. Allah has willed that it shall be my son Musa, and he has refused that he shall be, and that he shall be, or it shall be Ismail. And if Shaitan had wished to imitate the image of my son Musa alayhi salam, he won't be able to at all, and praise be to Allah. So when the Imam keeps saying, this is my wish, that Ismail should remain, I have prayed, and all this, why is he making all this statement? To prove that the issue of Imamah is not what he wants, it is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. This is the message, this is the moral of the story. That this is not what I want, it is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Then, in this hadith, from Kitab al-Tawheed of Sheikh al-Saduq, this is what is found. This is hadith number 10
under the chapter heading of Al-Bada. It says, the aforementioned is supported by the following tradition. Imam Sadiq said, nothing appeared to Allah regarding my son Ismail when he cut him off by death before me, so that it may be known that he was not the Imam after me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually took Ismail to make it known that he was not the Imam. And we saw a similar thing with Abdullah al-Aftah, who after 70 days of his father's death, he claimed Imamah, and he was taken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah took him away. He died. Just 70 days. And there is a hadith whereby Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we will come to that inshallah. He spoke to Imam Musa al-Kazem to be patient. He said, be patient. Your brother Abdullah, he will claim Imamah, and Allah will cut his life short. And this is exactly why I keep saying that the Imamah of Imam Musa al-Kazem alayhi salam was the most miraculous among the 12 Imams. This is my opinion. We go on. And of course, I'm going to treat even, points that maybe the Sunnis may want to, capitalize on in order to make argument. I will touch on that so that, they will not see themselves to be, immune of these things. I will touch on that. So the hadith clearly, it shows, people and Imam Sadiq, they loved Ismail. But the choice was not his. Now, the Ismaili person, I think, on the website was saying, the Imam represents Allah. So how can he have a choice and Allah has another choice? How is this possible? Well, I told you there is a verse there are verses in the Quran which we can actually point to. Verse 980, Allah told the Prophet, whether you ask forgiveness for them, O Muhammad, or you do not ask forgiveness for them. If you should ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. That is because they disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger, and Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people. So this goes to show that even the Prophet or an Imam can actually supplicate Allah on a decision which Allah has decided conclusively, and it doesn't amount to sin or going against the command of Allah because it is based on good intentions. And the purpose of the Imam even making this known is to show them that, oh, you know what? I am the father of Ismail. You don't love him more than I do. Even I want him, if it is left for me, I want him to remain. But this is not my choice. This is what the Imam is saying. But they forget, or they actually make themselves to forget this point, that the Imam is telling you that this is not my decision. They forget this part of this ahadith. And they focus instead and say, oh, well, is the Imam praying to Allah for something to be done that Allah doesn't want? What kind of people are these? As if, they haven't read the Quran. Then in verse 2856, Allah said, indeed, O Muhammad, you do not guide whom you like, but Allah guides whom He wills, and He is most knowing of the rightly guided. So, based on this verse, in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, the tafsir of Ibn Kathir on verse 2856, Sunnis believe that based on this tafsir of this ayah, on the tafsir of this ayah, the Prophet made supplication for one of his uncles to be guided to faith. And Allah turned down the request of the Holy Prophet.
So Allah did not grant the Prophet his wish for his uncle to be guided. Allah said, you will not be the one to guide whom you love, but Allah guides whom He wills. So if Imam Sadiq wants something and Allah wants another thing, what's the problem? Then in Fath al-Bari, Sharh Sahih Bukhari, volume 11, I am now going even into Sunni hadith, because, they will bring, this point up, just like the Ismailis are doing. In fact, the Sunnis are getting their argument from the Ismaili website. So I'm trying to kill here two birds with one stone. Let me pin this Sharh of Bukhari's hadith. This is Fath al-Bari, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. He said, and he's explaining a hadith in Bukhari. He said, and it has been said that the meaning of the statement, for every prophet there is one invocation which Allah does not refuse, refers to the best of their supplication. But they have indeed other supplications, and it has been said that every one of them, the prophets, have one accepted mass supplication about their ummah, either for destruction or salvation. As about the particular supplications, then some of them are fulfilled and some of them are not fulfilled. So, for the ummah, for the generality of people who follow the prophets, they have one mass supplication that Allah will accept. And then for individuals, Allah may choose to actually accept these supplications or He may not. This is from the Sharh we just read here. But apparently from the statement of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he was trying to convey the idea that the choice for Imamah was not even his own decision, it was the decision of Allah. Tayyib. If we want to go even further into, the Sunni books, I can cite, for example, Hadith number 1452a, whereby, it is believed or it is stated that Allah changed the number of sucklings from 10 to 5 in the Quran. And Allah abrogates Quranic verses based on verse 2106. ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها ألم تعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. We do not abrogate a verse or cause it to be forgotten, except that we bring forth one better than it or similar to it. Do you not know that Allah is over all things competent? So if I say, for example, Ismail was an ayah from the ayat of Allah that was meant to be forgotten because he was not the Imam, who can have a problem with such an explanation? In Quran 13:39, Allah erases what He wills and He confirms and He establishes, and with Him is the mother of the book. In 6:2 Quran, it is He who created you from clay and then decreed a term and a specific time known to Him. Then still you are in dispute. Quran 7:96, and if only the people of the cities had believed and feared Allah, we would have opened, that is bestowed upon them, blessings from the heaven and the earth. But they denied the messengers, so we seized them for what they were earning. Then in Tafsir of Ibn Abi Hatim, volume 10, page 2352. That is Tafsir for 3942. Allah takes the souls at the time of their death, and those that do not die, He takes during their sleep. Then He keeps those for which He has decreed death and releases the others for a specific term. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who give thought. In his commentary, Ibn Abi Hatim on 3942, he said, quoting a hadith from Ibn Abbas, according to which God makes people to die. If it occurred to God to take a soul, He would do so, and the person dies. Or He postpones the death until a specific time and returns the soul to its place. Why am I reading this? Because it is stated in our books that the Bada occurred in the life of Ismail. Allah wrote for him death twice, and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam supplicated that Allah should pardon him. Tayyib. Even the issue of Salah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in Sunni hadith, when he went for the Isra wal Mi'raj, Allah was giving him discount. He goes up, Allah reduces the prayer. He comes down, Musa tells him, go back. He goes, Allah gives him discount. He comes back, Musa tells him, no, your ummah cannot perform this number of prayers until the number of prayers were reduced to 5 prayers from 50. So if we are to compare, for example, the prayer of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam for Ismail, let's compare this. I'm stating this from the Quran just to demonstrate that this is not a bid'ah. Bada is not a bid'ah. The Imam praying for his son is not a bid'ah. It is not something new. It's not something that goes against the religion. So, Bada in relation to past prophets, how was their appointment, for example? Let's explain, the prayer for Ismail by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. So we see the prayers of previous prophets. In Surah Taha, verses 29 to 30, Musa alayhi salam pleaded with Allah. He said, وَاجْعَلْ لِي وَزِيرًا مِّنْ أَهْلِ هَارُونَ أَخِي, and appoint for me a minister from my family, Aaron, my brother. So does it mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not know that Harun was to be made a prophet until Musa alayhi salam prayed? Of course Allah knew. But this is the wasila that Allah is showing us. Musa supplicated. And of course the act of Musa has bearing even on the ummah of Muhammad, because we have the example in Hadith al-Manzila. طيب. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 129, Ibrahim alayhi salam made a prayer. He said, O Lord, and send among them a messenger from themselves who will recite to them your verses and teach them the book and wisdom and purify them. Indeed, you are the exalted in might, the wise. This is from Tarikh al-Islam of of Dahabi. He said, let me pin this link. This is from Dahabi, volume 1, page 37. He said, Yunus ibn Bukair from Ishaq, from Ibn Ishaq, from Nur ibn Yazid, from Khalid ibn Ma'dan, from some companions of the Prophet who asked the Prophet to tell them about himself. The Prophet said, I am the supplication of Ibrahim and the good news of Isa, and my mother saw a light when she conceived me, coming from the illuminating palaces of Busra, from the land of Sham. So even though we have read that Musa made a dua to Allah for Harun to become a prophet, and Ibrahim alayhi salam made the dua for the Prophet Muhammad to be sent as a prophet. In Jami' al-Tirmidhi, hadith number 3609, we read that Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, when he was asked, when was the prophethood established for you? He said, while Adam was between being soul and body. So the question will be, if Allah already knows that Rasulullah Muhammad would be the messenger of Allah, why did Ibrahim had to pray for a prophet? This is a wasila. The same way Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was praying for Ismail, and Allah said no, he's demonstrating to his people, to the Shia, that this is not my choice, this is the choice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, interestingly, there's even something even more interesting. Why did Rasulullah not have a son who outlived him? Have you thought to yourselves? What if Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam had a son who actually survived him? Do you know what's the answer for this? It's found in Bukhari.
Because he was supposed to be a prophet then, right? Okay, but Rasulullah.
Yes. So there is this hadith that if Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam had left a son behind, the son would have been a prophet. This is the hadith pinned. He said, this is narrated Ismail. I asked Abi Awfa, did you see Ibrahim, the son of the Prophet? He said, yes, but he died in his early childhood. Had there been a prophet after Muhammad, then his son would have lived, but there is no prophet after him. So what did Allah do? Allah took Ibrahim, Al-Qasim, Al-Tahir, and this of course has implication. Because if there would have been a son for Rasulullah, he would have been a prophet, but Allah took him, took the sons away. So, this confusion after Rasulullah died, the Muslims divided. Even in Bukhari 27:41, Aisha, had to deny that there was actually a nas for Imam Ali alayhi salam. And, interestingly, I was asking the question, when Sheikh al-Saduq said that the claim that Ismail was the Imam was a rumor fabricated. It was a fabricated rumor. Do you know that even the first person to actually fabricate a story relating to the death of a holy personality in the history of Islam, do you know who was the first person? Umar ibn al-Khattab. So it's not surprising if you have Ismailis insisting that, oh well, Ismail did not die, or you know what, he survived his father, or he was seen somewhere, or later on they came to the conclusion that, oh well, he died, but his son took over. And of course, you have other sects also who made similar claims. Now, if you go to the Sirah, this is the Sirah of Ibn Hisham. If you go to the Sirah of Ibn Hisham, there is an interesting story. Narrated Abu Huraira, when the Prophet passed away, Umar stood up and said, men from the hypocrites claim that the Messenger of Allah has died, but the Messenger has not passed away. He has gone to his Lord, as Musa did. He was absent from his people for 40 nights, and he then returned after it. And he then returned after it was said Moses had died. And wallah, he's swearing, Rasulullah will return as Moses returned. The hands and the feet of the men who claim Rasulullah is dead shall be chopped off. This is Sirah.
Sayyid, when I was a Sunni, this story is famously taught to children in madrasa class to glorify Umar bin Khattab. But now that I'm listening to it, according to you, when you read this tradition, firstly, one thing is true is that early companions didn't believe that he was dead, he was alive. But the thing is that can we understand that Umar bin Khattab believed that Rasulullah went into ghaiba or something like that? Because I think so. That's because if he's making the parallel to Moses, because Jews thought Moses went into ghaiba as well.
Yeah, this is a good question, and I brought this point about Umar ibn al-Khattab to demonstrate that this phenomenon of denying the death of people did not actually start with Ismailis or with Nawusiyya or Kaysaniya or whichever small sect. I would say Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was the first Ismaili in the history of Islam. Of course, he was not following Ismail. I can say he was the first Batini, having kind of like an occultic, hidden belief. And of course, in the other traditions in the Sihah, Abu Bakr came and then he recited the verse that Muhammad is a messenger, like messengers before him who have passed before him. So the reason for this will be interesting. If I am to speculate, I would say Umar actually did this so that he can instill authority over the people in order to kind of, contain the situation. This is what he was doing. He wasn't doing it out of maybe emotional reasons. He wasn't doing this.
Very strategic tactic from him.
Definitely. All Shia believe in occult batin knowledge. Well, it depends on what you mean by batin knowledge. If it's, some hallucinations, no, it's not all Shias that believe in that. Batin knowledge is something that can be understood in the end. It's not something, we just have fantasies over. Well, in the end, the 12 doctrine is actually tied to Hadith al-Thaqalain and the Hadith of the 12 Imams. If the Prophet, in the earliest Sunni sources, for example, take the book of Ibn Abi Shayba, written in the time of Imam Musa al-Kazem, containing a hadith that there would be 12 Imams. So there would be 12 Imams. It has an implication. Or Rasulullah saying, my successors are 12. This has an implication. It either means these 12 people would have ordinary lifespans, and after them, there will be judgment. Or it will mean that these 12 would have prolonged lives. So this is explained, it actually can be explained based on a hadith from the Prophet. Now, the problem is not, having batini ideas or understanding or a hadith. No, this is not the problem here. My problem is not with the batini teaching itself. My problem is with making up certain things which are not grounded. For example, you have Umar saying the Prophet did not die. On what basis? Just the way you make up the idea that, Ismail did not die or Muhammad ibn Ismail did not die. These were sects among the Ismailis. This becomes problematic. And we see, this trend after each Imam had passed away. It was actually a trend. So if Umar could actually, provide a hadith, fine. And by the way, we have, for example, hadith from Imam Rida alayhi salam and from Imam Sadiq, and both of them, talking about Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. For example, this is الصحيح والمعتبر من أخبار الحجة المنتظر. 40 hadith, Sahih hadith about the news of the awaited Imam. So you have this hadith from Sheikh الصدوق حدثني أبي قال حدثنا عبد الله بن جعفر الحميري عن أيوب بن نون عن محمد بن أبي عمير عن جميل بن دراج عن زرارة قال أبو عبد الله عليه السلام, Imam Sadiq said, يأتي على الناس زمان يغيب عنهم إمامهم فقلت له, there will come a time over the people that their Imam would actually be in concealment. Then the companion asked, ما يصنع الناس في ذلك الزمن? What would the people do? He said, يتمسكون بالأمر الذي هم عليه حتى يتبين لهم. They will remain steadfast. They will hold on to the command, onto the Imamah, which they are upon, until it becomes apparent to them. And there is another hadith similar to this. So, in the end, this today, I actually, wanted to focus on Bada, and we saw how on this issue, the concept of Bada is mutilated on the Ismaili website. They gave their definition. They misquoted Sheikh al-Saduq. They attributed to him what he did not say and what we do not hold as the narrative or interpretation for Bada. I think this is not fair. This is not fair. And this has to be rectified by whoever runs the website. Not for our sake, but for your sake. It doesn't even give you a good image. We never said that Bada actually means Allah changing his death. And what Sheikh al-Saduq is saying is based on this hadith. I will pin it from Al-Kafi, and then it's from Imam Sadiq, and Imam Sadiq will give the explanation. In this hadith, in Kitab al-Tawheed, under the title, heading of Bada, Imam Sadiq said, nothing appeared to Allah regarding my son when he cut him off by death before me, so that it may be known that he was not the Imam after me. Then, what did the Imam father say? Now, if people have a misunderstanding about what Bada means, people have today a misunderstanding about Tawheed. There are still Muslims to this day. There are still Muslims to this day who believe Allah sits, Allah has body parts and all that. It doesn't matter. In this hadith, it says that, and with the same chain of transmission, on the authority of Yunus, on the authority of Mansur, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam said, is there anything in the Abu Abdullah was asked, is there anything in the knowledge of Allah today that was not there yesterday? He replied, no. May Allah cause anyone or disgrace anyone who believes in such things. I asked, is it correct that everything that has happened and everything that will happen until the day of judgment is known to Allah? He replied, of course, it was so even before he created the creation. So it was the Zaydis that made up this claim that Bada is a change in destiny or in the knowledge of Allah, and they attributed this to us. We don't believe in this. And of course, we saw how, a supposed Sakadina, he's 12, and then, I read the interview he gave. It doesn't seem. So I think I would, inshallah, contain myself with this topic on Bada, and inshallah tomorrow is another day. We'll continue. I would continue responding to the remaining objections. I would wish, to end my responses to this website tomorrow, if possible. If not possible, then I would have to continue next tomorrow. And of course, afterwards, I will go to some side issues like the issue of Abdullah al-Aftah. So, inshallah, if anyone wants to say anything, you're welcome. If not, we can end the room maybe in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Jazakallah khair, Sayyid. Thank you for everything.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
Seems like Umar bin Khattab was the first of everything, eh?
Yeah, the first Quranist, the first Batini, the first everything.
First everything. I mean, wow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I call him the first Quranist too, right? Hasbunallah, kitab.
Uh, my intent is not to undermine a belief system, but Tris doesn't. Well, it's not about undermining you. Nobody's trying to undermine anything, but when you have certain misquotations, mistranslations, misinterpretations, all the misses on your website, this is not acceptable. You can't then say you've even misquoted the imams, like Imam Rida, for example, and even you've insulted on your website Imam Musa al-Kazem, like what I read yesterday about a supposed Sahabi saying the Imam's knowledge is not mature. Like I can, for example, unravel the claim that the Fatimids, for example, the predecessors of your Agha Khan, supposedly, they were not actually descendants of Ismail. This is a controversial claim. I can bring things up. Maybe even the Agha Khan is not even a descendant, maybe, of the Fatimids. Or the Fatimids didn't know they were they were meant to be descendants of Ismail. One of them wrote a letter and he linked his lineage to Abdullah instead of Ismail. So, inshallah, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you for your attention, your focus. So, inshallah, tomorrow would continue. I will try to, because the remaining points are not really they're not really big points. So, I'll try to, respond to them and then round up on refuting or responding to what is written on the website. And then afterwards, I would go to the issue of Abdullah al-Aftah. And finally, we can conclude and maybe have an interactive session. Whoever wants to come to the stage, no problem. We are not fighting here. Just the way you have the right to give a narrative, however, baseless in our estimation that narrative is, we also have the right to actually defend our narrative and our beliefs. So, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you for your attention. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. I hope Brother Hudson, Brother Nadim, you permit me to end the room. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, inshallah. Yeah. End the room.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay.
Wa alaikum salam.